Welcome, sir. Two questions, just following up on the chairman's question about goals. California is a different state, let's say, from North Dakota or Kansas. Can we ever hit 25 out of 50? Can we ever hit the middle of the national average with the diversity, the cultural problems, the language problems, the mobility, the size? What is your opinion as to can we hit the national average?
Well, I think we do have some unique issues in California that, of course, do make us different than many of our smaller states. As you indicated, we are quite diverse. We do have certain issues with our high current assistance caseload. These are our clients that are currently receiving public assistance, which make it more difficult to achieve levels that have been achieved in some other states. However, with that said, I think there are strategies and tactics that we can use to significantly increase the performance on those performance measures. Right now, we're going through a difficult economic time, and of course that makes it even more difficult as we deal with these issues. However, I do think we can increase our performance significantly, Senator.
Good. Because I think that has to do with my next question. That is, you are the third director in 3 years. And I understand the complexities of the job, and the chairman has just outlined some of the real problems of the department. But are there other maybe other issues? I don't know the history of the leadership of the department. Other than you're the third in 3 years, how do you expect the result to last longer than a year like the others have?
I think I'm in a very unique position as the fourth director, actually, in the history of the department. The first 3 directors were primarily concerned with the implementation of automation and statewide automation in California. California was paying over $200 million a year in state general fund penalties for our failure to implement statewide automation. I am now the first director who can now focus on federal performance measures, collections, increasing cost effectiveness. So I'm very happy to have this opportunity, and I think my job is different in many respects than the prior directors had.
Is there anything internal in the department itself regarding personnel or logistics that would prevent you from optimizing the goals you've just stated?
No, Senator, I don't believe so.
Thank you.
Senator Oropeza.
Thank you very much. I'm sort of sitting in between 2 microphones here.
Okay.
I'd like to follow up really on a couple of the questions asked by both our chair and our vice chair. In your testimony, you mentioned or stated that you believe that there are methods that can be employed to improve our cost effectiveness, and I was kind of hoping that you would go a little beyond that and say such as or to include, and then tell us about a couple of those. Would you do that now?
Certainly. I've looked at Pennsylvania, one of the states that Chairman Steinberg mentioned as one of the top performing states, and I've looked at their system. We now currently in California train each county has a training staff that conducts training for that individual county. By centralizing training We have the opportunity to reduce the number of staff that train statewide and provide uniform training for all staff. I think that's one of the things. One of the things we've also worked with is creating centralized phone centers so that each individual county agency need not answer in the phone. This is, we're doing that on a pilot basis right now. We have several counties that are engaged in that. Butte County is answering calls from another smaller county. San Mateo County is answering phone calls, or soon will be, for Marin, San Benito, and Santa Cruz County. And Orange County is taking Imperial County's calls. Now, we've just started that, but we found that what that has done is free up caseworkers to do more productive activities. Also, Pennsylvania makes extensive use of administrative process in establishing their court orders, as opposed to using the same processes that we use in California, which are judicial processes, and those are quite a bit less expensive.
I see. Okay. Along this same line of becoming more effective, more cost-effective and effective. Well, starting with effective in terms of enforcement and how that impacts our state socially. Talk for a minute about how you see that happening and how your duties as directing this program help resolve, perhaps, or address some of these issues in our state.
This program forms an important lifeline to so many families that actually need regular monthly child support in order to pay their bills. If we do our job well, those dollars are received by those families, and those families don't have to look to public means to support themselves. So it's very important in that respect. On the other hand, we also owe a duty to the non-custodial parents that pay support to promptly and effectively make sure that the amount of the child support orders that they are paying is in accordance with the guideline and in accordance with what they can afford to pay. Both sides of the equation are necessary to make sure that the child support system works. We find that if child support orders are too high, and in this economy with people becoming unemployed and underemployed, it's incumbent upon us to act quickly to make sure that those orders are adjusted to accurately reflect the ability of the individuals to pay. As long as we do that, then we will maintain the cooperation of our non-custodial parents who pay child support and will be more effective.
Well, that is so interesting to me, that second piece of what you said. I'm a child of divorce, and my mother experienced difficulties at times with child support. And at that time, a long time ago, I don't think, although I could be wrong about this, it was very different, or at least it appeared to me that it's, at least on its face, was different relative to the rights of who had the right to change an order, for instance, on the amount and the timing. That's really, I had no idea. I need to learn more about this aspect, because it appears to be very different than it was a while back. But what I don't, and another thing that I think is different is that we today have much more of an opportunity to utilize technology. And I understand that the department spent some goodly amount of money for the automation system that we use now, yet it does not interface with many of the other state agencies that would be so helpful, it seems to me, in locating and working with the non-custodial parent. on this. Can you talk to me a little bit about, or to us a little bit about this $1.5 billion, as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong about the numbers or any part of what I've said, this $1.5 billion investment that does not interface with the basics like the DMV, the Department of Insurance, the CDCR. These seems like logical places that you might find some of these folks that need to be found.
We have identified probably about 80 separate interfaces that would be helpful in the child's support world. As part of the development and implementation of the system, since these interfaces were not required for federal certification, some of those interfaces, or many of those interfaces, were not created during that time. Many of the interfaces now are data exchange interfaces, meaning we get the data, but the system doesn't do anything with the data except present it in the system to a caseworker. These are all things that need to be improved as we go forward to improve the functionality of the system, because, of course, the ideal interface is one that receives the data and takes the next appropriate step in dealing with that data, so that no caseworker intervention is necessary. But each one of those interfaces is something we are aware of and that we are working on.
You are, and what's your view? Again, it's a timing question, like the chair had on some matters. What's your view on the timing on, engaging some of these agencies like DMV and Department of Insurance and others?
We have discussions with those departments about creating the interface. Right now, defining what data we wish to have and how we wish to use that data in our system is subject to analysis and design.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Let's hear from witnesses in support of the nominee. Come on up. If there are other witnesses in support, come on up as well. Here you go.
Good afternoon. I'm Ileana Rodriguez, President of the Child Support Directors Association and Director in San Mateo County. On behalf of the Board of Directors of California's Child Support Association, thank you, Senator Steinberg, and Senators of the Rules Committee, for the opportunity to speak today at the confirmation hearing of the Director of the California Department of Child Support Services, Jan Sterla. I also want to welcome Mr. Sterla to the department. Our association, which represents the local child support directors of California's 58 counties, has had a long relationship with the Department of Child Support Services over the years, and we look forward to growing and strengthening that relationship still further under Mr. Sterla's leadership. I have had the honor of working with Mr. Sterla when he was the local child support director in Orange County, and during his tenure as the board member and past president of the Child Support Directors Association in California. He has battled passionately on behalf of this program in his 17 years. His ideas and ideals are stamped on many initiatives. In his short term as director of California's Department of Child Support Services, Mr. Sterla has demonstrated his desire to work in a strategic, thoughtful, and collaborative manner to increase collections and improve performance in California. Under Mr. Sterla's leadership, you can be confident that the California's Child Support Program will be led by a man who is extremely knowledgeable about the program and its issues, who is steadfast in his purpose to attain the highest levels of performance, is outcome-focused, and who holds himself to the highest standards. For these reasons, Mr. Sterla has the support of the local directors, who look forward to working with Mr. Sterla on the many issues, some of which you've mentioned today, confront the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming. Are there any witnesses in opposition? Okay, go ahead, Senator Dutton, and then I'd like to suggest a direction here.
I'm curious on the on the CCSES system that we're doing, I understand it was the maintenance and operation phase that created some of the problems for the overrun and so forth, or the cost overrun?
Yes, while we were implementing the system, we were also operating two other systems, a CASES system and an ARS system, and they had to be maintained and operated until CSE was finally implemented in November of 2008.
So how much will the upgrades cost?
The upgrades, the cost to the initial cost of the system was approximately $800 million, and there was approximately $100 million in change requests that were made to the system during the 10-year development and implementation schedule.
So how much are we going to need now to finish it? Is that?
Well, as we go forward, we have a change request, which are changes to the system, come in three basic varieties. Number one, changes in law that necessitated. Two, changes to our judicial forms, which our judicial council does, and changes in functionality, which are changes to make the system more cost-effective and work better.
Yeah, I can appreciate all that. I'm just trying to get a grasp on what they're going to cost me to finish the job with the upgrades and stuff, so because we obviously got a little financial problem here, and so I'm just trying to figure out what it is. If you can give me a dollar amount, and then I'd also like your thoughts as to where we're going to get the money.
Right now, we are developing our budget right now. I will say that we expect to have significant savings. This past year, we spent $223 million on our automation costs. I expect substantial savings in next year's budget from that.
You can't give me any hard numbers, right?
I don't have a hard number for you, Senator. I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Sturla, thank you again for coming today and your public service. Your 365th day is the 5th of January. And you come before this committee, as I said earlier, with excellent credentials. And I look forward hopefully to casting a yes vote in support of your confirmation. But I'm not ready to do so today because the conversation that we have had here illustrates, I think for me, at least as chair of the committee, and I would expect for my colleagues as well, that we want goals and timetables that are specific because you're now the third administrator in 3 years. And everyone does, in fact, get up and say that, they're optimistic. We've all read and know of strategic plans and master plans and all of that. And yet, you look at these statistics that you're not responsible for. This has been a long history. And it speaks to the need for aggressive action to improve performance. And so I will be prepared to vote for you and encourage the committee to do the same after we receive from you and your office a more specific detailing of goals and timetables around the following. When do you expect California to improve on its national ranking of 46 out of 51 on current collections? By what time period can we expect that ranking to jump to where? And I encourage you to be conservative. Don't just tell us what we want to hear. We would like you to report that within 6 months we'll go from 46 to first. But that make it credible, make it realistic, as long as it demonstrates real improvement over time. The same with arrearage collections. The same with the timetable for improving cost effectiveness. And then Senator Pais, I thought, asked a very important question about the integration of these various modes of technology that allow us to work with the DMV and the Department of Corrections and the various departments of social welfare so that you have access to as much information as possible to be able to help counties fine someone who is not paying the child support that they owe. In other words, this process, which it sounds like you're going through anyways now, we would like to see it. And we'd like to see it with as much specificity as possible so that we can say together that 3 years from now, we improved our ranking by, 100%, or we improved our ranking by 50%, and here's what we did to get there. I think it'll make your job and the mission of all who work for you that much more focused, that much more direct, and together we can be on the same page. Do you think you can do that over the next month or two?
I believe I can, Senator.
Okay. Thank you very much. So without objection, unless somebody wants to call for a vote, I'd like to put it over without prejudice. And again, I'd look forward to voting for you, but let's get that information so that we are specific about where we want to go with this department.
Okay?
Thank you very much, sir. All right. Let us move next to Ken Yeager as a member of the Air Resources Board. Mr. Yeager, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Any member of your family or friend or foe that you would like to introduce?
They're all back in San Jose listening to this online. So.
Okay, well, very good. Hi, everybody. Okay. Please go ahead with an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Steinberg and members of the Rules Committee. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you today for your consideration of my appointment to the California Air Resources Board. It has been my distinct honor to serve on the Air Resources Board for the last 8 months. I feel fortunate to have been appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger to the ARB at such an historic time. It is my hope that I can contribute to the implementation of AB 32, given my academic background, my years of experience in local government, and my passion for improving the physical well-being of California residents, particularly children. I believe the evidence is clear that poor air quality contributes to higher incidence of asthma in children and leads to unintended secondary health problems such as obesity and diabetes. My 6 years as a member of the San Jose City Council and almost 3 years on the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors gives me insight into the role that local government has in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. One significant way we can reduce our carbon footprint is through better land use planning and to understand the cause and effect relationship between smart growth, vehicle miles traveled, and clean air. As Santa Clara County's representative on the Bay Area's Metropolitan Transportation Commission and on the Association of Bay Area Governments, I advocate for policies that promote such planning as well as those that advance the principles of SB 375.
You got my vote.
As the recession continues to reduce, nothing like a little bit of homework from the college professor, I guess. As the recession continues to reduce the number of jobs in California, I will be working with our local building trades unions and our community colleges to help train people to gain the skills they need for green-collar jobs. As the representative on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District on the ARB and as a county supervisor from Silicon Valley, I hope to be a link between the ARB and the innovative companies in Silicon Valley that are at the forefront of our new green economy. I believe very strongly in the mission of the California Air Resources Board. Global warming and climate change are two of the most critical issues of our time. As a nation, we must do all we can to limit our dependence on foreign oil. As consumers, we must prioritize and value energy conservation. As policymakers, we must encourage and promote the use of alternative energy sources. And as stewards of the land, we must protect our forests, oceans, rivers, and lakes. But foremost in my decision-making process when I vote on regulations at ARB meetings is how our actions will improve the quality of air for our most vulnerable populations, namely children, seniors, and the infirm. The impact of poor air quality on the health of these populations is staggering in both human and economic terms. For children, it means higher rates of asthma, and for seniors, it means higher rates of chronic pulmonary diseases. For us as a state and a nation, it means higher medical costs. In contrast, cleaner air increases the overall health of our population, resulting in increased physical activity, which can lead to wide-ranging impacts on health by decreasing obesity, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and improving the overall quality of life. As a member of the ARB, I hope to bring more attention to these issues, especially the impact that air quality has on public health and our physical well-being. Thank you again for your consideration of my appointment. I'm now happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Is it Doctor or Mr.? What do you go by?
Doctor.
Dr. Yeager. Very good. Senator Dutton, would you happen to have any questions? Let you
Sure.
go
How do
first.
you feel about SB 295?
Sure.
Back when we met in June, I had asked you if you'd had a chance. Well, first of all, let me back up just a tad. Let me ask you a question that came up in a committee hearing the other day. Do you happen to feel that small business is expendable with regards to enacting the Climate Change Act?
I don't believe that they are expendable.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. In our last meeting, when you and I met back in June, I asked you if you'd had an opportunity to take a look at some of the peer reviews of the AB 32 economic analysis that was done. And you indicated to me at that time that you had not. I just wondered if you now had a chance to look at them.
Senator, I happen to have a copy of the latest report that is out, and I believe that you were making references to during our conversation.
That's not the Sac State one, is it?
This is the Sac State one.
Yeah, that's not the one, because that wasn't out at the time you and I talked. The ones I'm talking about is there was a UCLA professor by the name of Matt Kahn who noted that the cost of regulations is likely to be much larger than what was reported, and this is in the economic analysis done by CARB. And then also you have Harvard professor Robert Stavins, who noted that the economic analysis was terribly deficient in critical ways and should not be used by state government or the public for the purposes of assessing the likely cost of CARB's plans, and that's his quote. Those were the two reports, and then, of course, our own LEO had noted when they did a review of the report, the economic analysis, that the evaluation of the cost and savings were inconsistent and incomplete. Now, those were actually the three that I had talked to you about. Have you taken a look at any of those three?
Yes, I have, Senator.
Okay. And what's your opinion?
Well, it's a very worthy conversation that goes on with these studies. I think certainly with my academic background, you realize that there are many ways to look at various issues, and I certainly value research. As California is in the forefront of many of these decisions, I think it's important that we do it right. I think trying to get to the goal line is never easy. I think it's important for all of us, again, to look at the studies, to see what they say, and to really come up with as close as we can to the right answers that we have. As I think you know, we will be receiving a report from ARB staff in December with another look at the economic analysis, and certainly at that time we can see what they've included as far as the studies that you have reported, and certainly the conversation will continue on from there.
Okay, and in the meantime, we've lost another 750,000 jobs right now, and the regulatory heaviness is one of the things cited as one of the causes, and it's also one of the things I'm hearing. I don't understand. If you said you do not feel that small businesses are expendable, why wouldn't you want to really put a high level of importance on the economic analysis and make sure we get it right? Because as you just pointed out, the one that was just put out by Sac State, those professors, they estimate that the AB 32 will cost each small business in California nearly $50,000 and will add 1.1 million people to our unemployment lines. Now, I don't understand why you feel that we shouldn't be taking a real serious look at this, because even if it's remotely true that this could be possible, I think I'd be really concerned if I was about to embark on a new regulatory scheme with fees and everything else. I'd want to make sure I kind of got it right. And I'm not right now, don't have the confidence that it is right. And I'm really concerned that you as a member of the board, you don't seem to feel that some of these small business operators, I'm not talking about the giants, the big boys, I'm talking about the small guys. I don't understand why they don't seem to be getting more of a fair hearing when they're dealing with ARB.
You know, I hope I've stated that I do take this issue very important, and certainly as someone who represents many of these small businesses in San Jose and Santa Clara County, certainly understand that the impact that the recession and many of the government regulations is having on them. My feeling is that the ARB staff and certainly the board takes this whole issue very seriously. I know, again, in December we will be discussing the new economic analysis. I'm not sure exactly when it will be out, but I know these things take time to be able to get the information and to do it right. So I don't believe anybody's dragging their feet on this.
Well, I just want to remind you, I was around here, when AB 32 was passed, and there's probably about 12 or 13, maybe 14 references about the economic viability of what our action plan was going to be. And that was supposed to be of the critical importance. And yet I see CARB just keep going on. It's almost like you're trying to take and this is strictly my own personal opinion right now, certainly not shared with the majority probably on this committee, but right now, what I'm concerned about, we're creating a whole bunch of problems right now that people are having trouble dealing with on top of a recession. Okay, and supposedly we're supposed to be setting the example for the rest of the world. Well, I got to tell you, if we don't get it right, nobody's going to follow this example. And then the only thing we've accomplished at this point, we've prolonged the recession. We've actually created a lot of economic hardship on people, and for no good reason at this point, because if we don't get it right, nobody else is going to follow us.
I agree.
So that was my concern I expressed to you back in June. I still have it. Frankly, I've been a little disappointed that CARB hasn't actually been more proactive in making sure we get it right. So.
How much, just to follow up, because it's a very important line of questioning, how much time do you or does CARB spend on the green economy, on the opportunity that we all talk about to create high-wage green jobs? Is that a frequent topic of discussion at CARB meetings? How to integrate the importance of the economy with a good, healthy climate?
Absolutely. We have many business representatives, testifying at our meetings. Certainly, with all the workshops and the outreach that ARB staff does, certainly includes local businesses. I think ARB staff has done a great job holding workshops throughout the state, making sure that they're receiving input from people. Certainly, again, for those of us who are elected officials on the ARB board, I've been very aware of the need for more green jobs, for the training of people. We've certainly have done things here in the community colleges in the Santa Clara County area. So again, we have lost so many jobs and so many people are looking for jobs. We know that this is one of the sectors that certainly can grow, and we need to make sure that our workforce is ready for those jobs when they become open.
Yeah, and over time, I know that the AB 32 planning process and all that it entails and all the controversies, it's enough work to do for a board. But really, the opportunity to turn Senator Dutton's, legitimate concerns sort of on their head is to be, I think, much more bold about jump-starting a green economy. I mean, who's looking at our public finance system? Who's looking at our tax incentives? Who's looking at our bonds and the way that we pass bonds? We're looking at it, to be honest with you, some of it, but in the midst of this fiscal crisis, et cetera, ARB is in a perfect place to sort of expand its scope to not have it be an either or, because it can't be either clean air and healthy climate or a good, strong jobs base. I would encourage more thought and more bold action.
Thank you. I know there's a number of members of ARB staff here in the audience today, and I'm sure they've heard your comments, and I'll certainly take them back to Chairman Nichols and everybody on the board.
Appreciate it. I want to ask you, as the Bay Area representative, your view on interbasin pollution transport. Having nothing to do with the fact that I represent Sacramento in the state Senate, that means that it's been a long-held topic of discussion about as the Bay Area improves its air quality, the air quality of the Sacramento-San Joaquin Basin gets worse, and your view on how to balance two very important regions of our state.
Yeah, it will be very interesting, with the RTAC coming up with their goals for the clean air standards for each of the regions. We're still sort of waiting for them to issue that report, which will certainly happen in September. And at this point, we don't know whether it's going to be overall goals for the state or whether they're going to do it by region. Certainly, when you think the Bay Area has better air quality as opposed to the San Joaquin Valley and more of the inland areas, and so it's a question of how you sort of balance that all together. We know that certainly some of the regulations will affect the valley more than they do on the coast. I think again all of us are sort of waiting for the RTAC to make their decisions, and I think that will help guide our decisions better.
Okay, my last question: impact of the 3-day furloughs on the ARB staff. What can you tell us about what you've seen as a member of the board?
It has taken a big toll, as you can imagine. This is a very critical year for ARB, with working with many of their regulations, certainly trying to continue on with their public input, and to lose those three days a month, as I think caused a lot of frustration and a lot of stress on the organization. As Senator Dutton was saying, we need to do it right, and this certainly takes a lot of staff time away from the critical work that they're doing.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor. All right. Are there other questions?
Sure.
Senator Onnested.
Dr. Yeager, thank you for being here. I don't buy a lot of, this green economy. Maybe in the year 2050 we can achieve some of the goals that the legislature's been talking about. But the fact of the matter right now is hundreds of thousands of jobs, real jobs, not green jobs, but real jobs, are being lost, and a lot of them in my district due to decisions made by CARB. I can tell you that of the 3 largest trucking firms in the 4th Senate District, 2 are going out of business. Well, one is moving to Oregon, the other is going out of business because they cannot comply with the economic facts of life based on the set of regulations that came out of the staff of CARB that you laud and I fault for doing poor research, not having research available for the legislation to look at, especially the legislative analysts being very critical when they're trying to do their projections and can't even get the information. How can you sit there as a director and say that you have such faith in the CARB staff? I happen to think that maybe 3 furlough days isn't enough. The less we make the CARB staff come to work, maybe the better off the economy of California will be. That's how hardline I am on this position. I asked some questions based on some of your opening statements. First of all, where does CARB find in any of its mandate getting into issues such as land use planning and smart growth? Is not CARB based on to set air quality standards, especially regulating mobile sources of pollutions and then working with the local districts, air districts on the stationary? Isn't that their charge? Is land use planning and smart growth part of their overall charge? I can't find it anywhere in AB 32 or anywhere else where this is really the purview of the Air Quality Board, and yet it has a lot to do with their past performance. I'd like to have you respond to where do you find that charge?
Well, Senator Steinberg might be able to help me out here, but with SB 375 specifically gave some of the regulation authority to ARB to carry out the mission of SB 375.
Well, more specifically, if I may, it's exactly right. This bill, of course, passed both houses of the legislature last year signed by the governor into law, went into effect January 1st, and it specifically gives ARB the obligation to set targets, air quality targets, for the 17 metropolitan planning organization regions of the state. So the ARB is written directly into the law.
Second question. You made the statement that we need to do all we can do to become less dependent on foreign oil. Do you personally support increased oil production coming from Los Angeles County? Specifically, let's even say off of Santa Barbara?
I am not in support of offshore drilling off the coast of California.
So you are not in support of all we can do to get less dependent on foreign oil?
I believe, with our efforts with renewable energy, with better conservation, that with hydropower, any number of sources that we have here, that we'll be able to, I hope to be able to create enough of our own energy that it does lessen our dependence on foreign oil.
But you know that that's not happening. Solar, wind, biomass, all of these have been environmentally challenged in the courts, technologically so expensive that we can't afford to do it without government subsidy. This is what your green economy and all your new green jobs or so-called green jobs are going to be based on, and yet we can't get a single biomass plant up and running in the area where California has its forests because of environmental and legislative restrictions. It's all pie in the sky. It's all double talk. And in the meantime, real jobs are being lost every day in this state, and much of it the direct result of the lack of foresight by the Air Resources Board, which you seem to support in considering the economic question to some of the decisions they're making regarding air quality standards. How do you react to that?
You are correct. I am a supporter of the California Air Resources Board. I think it can always do better. It can always receive as much input as it can from the public and from businesses so that they can do the best regulations that they can. I think there's a tremendous sense that, again, we need to do it right here first. Other states, other countries are looking at what we're doing. We are certainly paving new territory on all of these issues. Again, I think all of us take very seriously the issues of global warming and the impact it's had on the environment, and all of us are trying to do as good of a job as we can, and that often, again, means more dialogue, more research. But I think certainly the legislature and the voters of this state have certainly asked us to do all we can to deal with these very important issues.
I guess I just make one more comment. In these new green jobs that you're talking about, let's talk about biomass. You know, I'm thinking about a year ago when in one day the amount of carbon put in the air in my 4th Senate district alone from uncontrolled forest fires, over 1,000 of them starting in one night, much of which could have been reduced had we had some honest effort in reducing biomass from the floor of the forest, an effort which has not even a year later started. Maybe we need to instead of thinking about and the result of all that carbon in the air. I mean, you can pass all the regulations you want because China is putting much more than that in the air every day that's coming over here. How can you expect that anything that you do as far as the kinds of the decisions that have been made are going to have any impact whatsoever on global warming until you get compliance and control of all of these wildfires, all of the carbon coal in the air from China, everything that Europe is doing, which, by the way, they've gone backwards now on their air resources regulations as of 6 months ago. It seems like we're not leading the world. We're kind of like being the tail that's kind of following wherever the dog's going.
It's a good point, especially when you think of...
Well, I'll take it as that's as Senator Ross says, indicated a comment and a very strong opinion. I'll let you sort of wrap it up in your closing, okay? Let's see if there are witnesses in... do you have a question, Senator Rapeza? Go ahead, sorry. Go.
Just
Go.
shouldn't take long.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. First of all, Dr. Yeager, want to express my appreciation for the time that we spent talking.
Thank you.
And many of my questions were answered there. I'd like to ask you sort of a big picture kind of question, and it's not on policy. It's on your own view of yourself and the board that you seek to continue on. Yourself, the board, and then sort of the people of California as the beneficiaries or the recipients of the product that you all put out there in terms of the regulation, enforcement, etc. Kind of a big question, but how do you view how you will fit, where you will fit, going down the road for potentially a little bit of time or potentially quite a bit of time? How do you view your role in the context of these other groupings, which is, your board? How do you view your relationship and what you will do as a board member, what your responsibility is, what the board's responsibility then to the public at large?
Yeah, I believe we have a very impressive 11-member board, and each member brings a different perspective, which I think we certainly need to make better decisions. Because of the years that I have spent in local government, I believe that's one of the perspectives that I bring, and want to make sure that before passing a new rule or regulation that the board and staff understands the impact it will have on local government. Those of us who deal with land use and transportation understand how it really works when the rubber hits the road,
yeah.
And certainly want to make sure that those are incorporated well into the regulations that we have. Like you, work very much on public health issues and children's issues. It's one of the reasons I wanted to serve on this board, care about public health and making sure the air quality is good and it promotes physical activity, outdoor physical activity. And so want to make sure that all of the regulations that we pass are tied into that. There's a third part, and maybe it's the professor side of me coming out. I think many people don't really quite understand a lot about ARB and how it operates and who's even on the board.
That's true.
And I've been working very hard, and certainly in my county and in the 9 Bay Area County, to get out that information so people can respond and they can read up and they can be part of the discussion that is being held.
And just to quickly follow up on that, understanding that you view that as sort of your relationship to the world, so to speak, this world, how would your agenda of, you mentioned children and the other things that you mentioned earlier as concerns, manifest themselves? How do you see yourself contributing beyond, or do you just think it is sharing your input and your point of view, which I concur is extremely valuable?
No, I believe ARB staff and our director are certainly responsive to the board as they should be. Mm-hmm. And again, each of us bring a different perspective, and certainly areas that we need to go forward with. The regulations, again, these are very complicated, so again, you want to make sure that you do it right. And a lot of it, of course, is all of us, doing our homework, being very active participants of the issues that are going on, and again, understanding the repercussions that many of them have, and certainly I understand Senator Dutton's concerns as well. So it's again going as deep as we can and understanding what the overall impact of our regulations will be.
Thank you. And just finally, I would share with you my hope that as a member of this board for between whenever it gets approved on the floor up to 11 years, which we figured out was about max that you could potentially serve. Or no, it wasn't 11, was it? It was some.
It'd be about 9 more.
It's a goodly amount of time. In that time, do you see a time when actual board members would bring proposals, or would it be more of a reaction to what the legislature brings to you all, and also what is sort of generated by staff as a result of conversation that board has?
Yeah, again, I think those of us, particularly who served in local office, but certainly here at the state level as well, we're not there to be a potted plant, We have many of our own ideas, and it's our obligation to bring those forward, to have it as part of the discussion. Certainly, many of the times it is responding to staff, but again, we all need to be very active participants, and there certainly will be issues that I see and concerns that I will raise that other board members or staff won't, because that's just not their perspective, or they're dealing with other issues at the time.
So I'm sort of leading you to water, but so you would see yourself potentially bringing issues in the areas that you've expressed, and perhaps others, to the board itself for direction to the staff.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, that's part of what excites me about serving on the ARB board.
Okay,
being able to be that
much.
type of participant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Anybody else, Senator Cedillo? All right.
I have my regular stuff.
Go ahead.
Just since you guys mission is to address concerns about mobile sources of air pollution. In our state, and it's just a comment, but a question about maybe your perspective, or when are you guys going to weigh in? But we actually don't permit 2.5 million motorists to drive with a license. And as a result, we have over 10% of the motoring public driving the oldest vehicles on the road, and they're the most polluting vehicles. And so, given this is your mission and your concern, I'm wondering if you've done any studies and measuring on the impact of that policy on the both economic and public health of the state of California, your concerns about it, when we can hear from you on it.
Senator, in the 8 months that I've been on the board, I don't recall that issue coming up before, so I'm sorry that I can't answer you, but I'll get back to you as soon as I can talk to staff and answer that question.
Right. I'm excited that you're professorial about this, and that you would have a kind of professorial approach to figuring out. 10% seems to be a significant amount, a measurable amount, and when they're driving the most polluting vehicles, we do a lot of things to try to improve the quality of air on our highways, congestion pricing, try to encourage behavior for carpooling. We encourage hybrids. All those we go to great pains to measure what their impact is on our public health. But here is 10% that we know for sure, given a different circumstance, would be driving newer cars, less polluting, more efficient, and yet we continue to be kind of, I'll say, agnostic about the impact of forcing 10% of our motoring public, 2.5 million people, to drive the oldest vehicles in the state.
And I assume that was part of the philosophy behind the Cash for Clunker program, to get some of those vehicles off.
Right. Well, that's precisely my point. So you take initiatives like this, Cash for Clunkers, that's the basis for it, and yet on the other hand, we have policies that don't permit 2.5 million people to participate in that.
I understand.
Thank you, Senator. Are there witnesses in support of the nominee? Come on up. Take them all at one time, briefly, if we might. Thank you.
Chairman Steinberg, Senators, Bill McGavin with Sierra Club, California, just here to say a few brief words in support of the confirmation of Dr. Yeager. The bar has been set high for the Bay Area seat on the board. The last two occupants were Mark DeSaulnier and Jerry Hill, who were clean air champions, and we think Governor Schwarzenegger chose wisely in appointing Dr. Yeager. He does a lot of the important work in between meetings to make sure he's prepared, ask good questions, and in the 8 months he's been on the board, we think he's done an excellent job. He understands the connections among land use and transportation and emissions. He focuses on health and making sure that we base decisions on the best information. For example, when the board was considering the low-carbon fuel standard, Dr. Yeager came out strongly for considering all of the life cycle emissions that go into the production of fuel, which was an important step forward. So we're happy to support his confirmation.
Mr. Chairman and members, I'm Bonnie Holmes-Jen with the American Lung Association of California, and we are also very pleased to support Dr. Yeager's confirmation. And we want to say we are really impressed with his commitment to improving air quality and public health and to reducing the suffering of individuals with asthma and other chronic lung illnesses in California. We also find Dr. Yeager very accessible to address, to listen to and address our issues and concerns, and we find that he's committed to ambitious and workable solutions to reduce global warming and promote smart growth. As you can see, he takes time to deeply study the issues and understand them from all sides. We think he's a very strong addition to the board. Please endorse his confirmation.
Thank you. Next.
Nidhi Bautista with the Coalition for Clean Air. We also support Dr. Yeager's appointment. When we look at board members to serve on this very important agency, we want to ensure that they're accessible, that they're informed, and they're engaged. And we feel very confident that Dr. Yeager meets that criteria. And we do look forward to the ARB board being an aggressive champion for clean air, but one that's willing to engage with communities to ensure that they are protected as well. So with that, we just want to express our support and our commitment to Dr. Yeager's nomination. Thank you
very much. Ms. Miller.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, Roxanne Miller, here today representing our mayor, Chuck Reed, and our city of San Jose. The mayor has known Ken since he was first on the city council of the city of San Jose. Ken has exhibited always a deep knowledge of local government as well as the climate change related issues. Ken's position as the Bay Area Quality Management District Board member, coupled with his position as a Santa Clara County Board of Supervisor member, brings a wealth of knowledge with regard to local government and how decisions made locally at the state level can impact the state in a larger context. In the county, Ken has taken a leadership position with our climate action team, real world, on the ground, and knows firsthand what those decisions mean as far as impacts. Since CARB has been tasked with implementing initiatives to make the goals of AB 32 standards a reality, we are in San Jose, and the mayor is specifically, confident of the contribution that Ken will make to the endeavors of the Air Resources Board. We appreciate your consideration and wholeheartedly support his nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Any opposition? All right. I'm pleased to support the nomination. You come from, again, a research background, but you also obviously have involved yourself in politics and in public policy, and I just think the combination is rare. And thank you for your willingness to extend your public service. Not like you don't already have enough to do with all of your other responsibilities. I'd be happy to take a motion. Gonna move? No? Oh, yeah. Okay. That's okay. It's okay. Moved by Senator Oropeza. Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo? Dutton?
No.
Dutton, no. Oropeza? Aye. Oropeza, aye. Onnested?
No.
Onnested, no. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
We'll put the measure on call until Senator Cedillo comes back, okay? Thank you very much, Dr. Yeager. Best to you. All right, let us move. Well, hold on one second. Need a break? Let's take 5, okay? 5 minutes. Run to the restroom.